These are all things that have been prophesized to a certain degree in science fiction for the last 30, 40 years or so, but these are now like very real phenomena. We got eternal sunshine of the spotless mind in real life. They're able to actually manipulate our minds.
Like, I guarantee like majority of them would choose to go that route.
So human brain cells powering AI, taking human jobs. Could somebody like hack my brain?
Bringing people back from the dead in digital form.
Does that make you the same person? You trick yourself into feeling like it's real.
You do get into a really interesting question of
how far do we take it? Welcome guys, second edition of the Mind Blown livestream.
What's up everybody?
Yeah, ready to blow some minds, you know what I'm saying?
Let's do it. Okay, so this session is all about the mind versus the machine. So we're basically going to look at how our minds are being influenced, shaped, and even invaded by technology. So you ready for it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I'm excited.
Okay, so we got eternal sunshine of the spotless mind in real life. We got computers powered by human neurons. And we've got bringing people back from the dead in digital form.
From the dead?
From the dead, yeah.
So like human brain
style?
bringing people back from the dead, like Louis C.K.'s career.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he could be doing better off post-mortem, that kind of thing. So yeah, you never know. But these are all things that have been kind of prophesized to a certain degree in science fiction for the last 30, 40 years or so. But these are now like very real phenomena that's existing today. So we're going to dive right in.
All right, let's do it.
Let's get it.
Okay, so just wanted to welcome Chris Markland, aka Supafly, again.
Hey, what's good, y'all? It's your boy Supafly out here. I make content on my Instagram at I am Supafly and TikTok at Supafly Comics, talking about all things nerdy, Marvel, DC, all that good stuff. I also recently started a podcast of my own, the Icon Squad Pod, where we discuss a lot of the same similar thoughts and themes that like I discuss on my main content. So yeah, be sure to check it out. Excited to get into it with the gang here today. Let's get it.
All right, and Conor McCreery.
Hello, everybody. I'm Connor, aka Connor, the notorious Connor. Now that's all I've got, really. Actually, I'm not Conor McGregor. I did once challenge him to a fight on Twitter, though. He did not respond. I'm a comic book creator. I'm a writer. Those of you who know Scott may know his Future Now series that I helped co-create and co-write. But I also do graphic novels for companies like Boom and IDW and HarperCollins and Scholastic. And yeah, so I'm going to be bringing some nerd energy myself, and I'm really interested to kind of dive in and see what we feel about these real life science fiction, science fantasy ideas coming home to our own brains.
That are no longer feeling like fantasy nor fiction.
That's right. Yeah. In the real life. And yeah, so for the first one we've got up for you is the eternal sunshine of the spotless mind in real life. So basically there's, this is stuff that's happening across multiple institutions, not just in one sort of place, but what across these multiple sort of research studies, they've been able to demonstrate that they're able to actually manipulate our minds. So in various ways, they're selectively targeting our neurons, and they're able to weaken them or overwrite them in very real ways, which is pretty effing mind-blowing. And the basic idea is that it's just they're able to kind of go in and target our mind and influence it in ways such as de-weighting a certain emotional impact that a memory might have, either in the sense that you're feeling it less, or they can actually create a sense of fear for an associated memory that didn't exist before. So crazy stuff. What do you guys think?
I mean, right off the bat, like, it's such like an insane concept. I think it speaks a lot to like the era that we currently live in. Like, I've said it before, I'm sure I've said it on this show, like, even like especially that like we live in the age of convenience, where it's like everything in our lives, all the technology that we have and all of like the apps and all of like the tools that we currently have access to are basically designed to make our lives as like convenient and stress-free as possible, whether it be like not having to like travel thousands of miles to talk to friends or loved ones, whether it be like you're looking for someone to date, oh, just open up Tinder, oh, just open up Hinge and just like get swiping. Or like you want to like, order something, you want to like you want to go to your local grocery store, oh, just order it off of Amazon. You know what I'm saying? This just feels like the logical extension of that, but in regards to like psychology, because we've already been seeing like the rise of folks using like AI apps like Chat GPT and whatnot, like as therapists to like talk to about like their problems and struggles, and like who genuinely feel like this artificial intelligence program, this collection of ones and zeros, actually cares about them. So it's like, yeah, this kind of like technology developing and coming into effect just seems like the logical like progression of that. Funny enough, in terms of like I guess sci-fi or like fantasy concepts that it reminds me of, this one is particularly fresh in my mind because I just saw it for the first time, or at least a bit of it for the first time last night. K-pop Demon Hunters. Funny enough, there's a character in that, like a very popular film, like took the world by storm over the last year, like super critically well received. And there's a character in that movie who's like one of the villains, I guess, who's like his entire motivation is that like he sells his soul to this demon and is working for this demon in the hopes that the demon will like take his traumatic memories away of like his greatest shame from like 4,000 years ago when he was still alive. And like that's like his entire motivation for like doing everything that like he does in the movie, until like at the end he kind of like comes around and realizes that like he doesn't have to like live like in like shackles or like in like bondage based off like his past mistakes. Yeah, this kind of technology just seems like kind of a similar idea in that like, hey, you have a traumatic memory that's like been causing you a lot of like pain and hardship. Yeah, we can just like take that out. Like super lickety split, easy, all said and done, you know what I'm saying? And it's like it's even kind of similar to a short film that I was writing like a couple years back, where without giving too much away, without spoiling too much, without like like giving away too much for free, but there's a villain who like essentially has like this plot to like create like a hyper efficient kind of master race of like logical beings who like zero like emotion that interferes with them like doing their missions or getting the job done. And they plan on doing it through like neuroscience and through like shutting off the emotional center of your brain, because in their mind it's like the emotions or like the feelings or like the memories that comprise majority, if not all, of who we are nothing more than just like obstacles or like barriers that prevent us from being the best versions of ourselves. So yeah, this kind of, when I was at the time I was writing it, it seemed like such an outlandish like concept that was only like semi based in reality. But lo and behold, it seems like what we're seeing here today. I'm
Ahead
curious
of
your
your
thoughts,
time.
Connor.
Ahead of your time. No, I mean, I think it's interesting that you bring up K-pop Demon Hunters, right? Because I think very much you look at how that movie works and how at the end of the film, this antagonist ends up kind of realizing that erasing that traumatic memory is not going to serve him in the way that he wants it to. And so it gets into an interesting question of like, if you don't remember something traumatic, does it affect you? And I think, obviously like repressed memories, it's a very kind of, some people would call it pseudoscience. It's not necessarily locked down in terms of like, oh, for sure, every time that somebody has a repressed memory, we know 100% that is real. Sometimes there's evidence these things can be kind of inceptioned. But people who, I knew someone who had a repressed memory, and even though they didn't know what it was, they had this heaviness in their life. And so you could ask the question of like, just because you're removing the memory, does it actually do anything to lessen the trauma? Now, maybe this science would actually allow you to actually lessen trauma. And in that sense, you can see a lot of really interesting opportunities. I think the knee-jerk reaction is like, no, we have to remember everything. We have to go through these things. But, that's me speaking from like, pretty easy life, basically, right? I don't have too many horrible traumas in my life that I would be like, oh man, I can't push past that. And so I think there is an interesting question of like, is like, could this be used to deal with something like clinical depression, which is not obviously a memory-based thing, but if we can start playing with how your brain processes these sort of traumas, or how your brain interacts with, depression, things like that, maybe there really is an interesting opportunity to help someone who's got clinical depression be able to move through that in a more productive way. But at the same token, yeah, to me, it's very much like, just getting rid of the memory, I don't know if it gets rid of the trauma. And I do think there is something valuable to some extent in, like, again, going back to K-pop Demon Hunters, in, being able to actually contextualize and kind of master your past so that it doesn't have the same power to harm you. Again, that's being, speaking from a pretty privileged perspective, but at the same token, I know enough, enough stories of people who are like, yeah, this haunted me, and then I made my peace with it, and I feel like a much stronger, more powerful person. So I think there's an interesting line that you'd want to make sure you don't cross of losing people's ability to process trauma and to overcome trauma and to grow from trauma.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. That's a very fair point. Like, at least like for me personally, like I have like, or like I at least like I know people who like have experienced like super like visceral levels of trauma, and it gets to the point where like their PTSD gets so intense that like they can't even like sleep at night. They can't even, like, every time they close their eyes, they picture certain images or certain scenarios of like what occurred. And like, yeah, you're right in that, like, a lot, oftentimes, like, it can be very debilitating. It can be very like harrowing process. And like, while there are lots of folks who like are able to come out on the other end of it stronger for it, having mastered their trauma, having mastered their past mistakes, and like moving past it, there are lots of others who like it ends up being like in a lot of ways the death of them. And like, I feel that we as humans, like, it's a natural inclination to want to like minimize suffering as much as possible, minimize like, pain and hardship as much as possible. Like, and yeah, obviously, like, in terms of like progress and such, like, even if you look at the development of things in the neuroscience industry, like, say, like antidepressants, like, I'm sure, like, back when they were first invented, there was a certain level of stigma being like, oh, this is like, you're messing with like people's brain chemistry, like how much is like if you take away depression, like how much of it is like you taking away like their identity. And it's like, even with like antidepressants, I hear very mixed opinions about it from people who like are on it and have taken it. Some people I know who have like are on antidepressants, like, they say that like they have like a very like significant higher quality of life, as to where like they feels like they can like, like enjoy themselves a bit more, that like they're no longer carrying around that like heavy weight. And I've also known a lot of other people who like don't like the way that it makes them feel, that it makes them feel like numb to everything, and that like it's hard to feel like, yeah, any emotion when on antidepressants. So it's like, I don't think that this is going to prove to be a one size fits all scenario, but my concern is that it's going to be widely used that way. Because I feel that if you were to take a lot of the people who have moved past their trauma and traumas in their lives, who have become stronger for it, who have like come out on seen the light at the end of the tunnel and come out on the other end of it stronger. I feel like if you were to give them the option when they were going through that trauma and the process of like dealing with that trauma, if you were to give them the option of like, hey, we have this like magic like chip that we could put into your brain, or you have this magic like cure that can basically like take all your trauma away and make you not remember it, like, I guarantee like majority of them would choose to go that route, just because like it's a lot easier than having to like deal with it every day. It's hard to say like what how the or like it's hard to predict what like the ramifications on society will be, but suffice it to say, I'm kind of mixed on it. I'm very mixed on it.
Well,
So
and
maybe quick question.
you definitely know that capitalism is going to come in on something like this, right? Like, this is not
Of
going to
course.
be, this is not going to sit there. It's not going to be like, brought to us by these well-meaning men and women, the doctors who are going to, it is going to be sold as a one-size-fits-all kind of solution. And, and you're also going to get into the question of like, well, who's going to be able to afford it? Is this going to be a treatment solely for the wealthy, or is this going to be a treatment that, eventually, and how long does it take for, if it does work, for governments to step in and say, hey, we have to, we have to fund this? And I mean, I don't know. I mean, you make the argument that because it's not chemicals and it's not as much of a build time and as much trial and error, that the medication treatment should be much cheaper. But I'm also curious about like how many server farms and how much water and how much electricity goes into something like this. And I don't know. I mean, and maybe if it works, you'd say, hey, it doesn't matter. If it actually does help people live better, more healthy lives, then it's worth whatever the ancillary costs are. But I agree with you, Chris. I don't think it's going to be one size fits all. And, we don't really know that much about the brain when it really gets down to it.
Over
So I
under
guess a question.
50% chance, 50% chance that they make this like technology a subscription service.
Probably over. I'll take the over. Just
Well, they could just
$9.99, man.
The experience of watching a movie directly to your mind versus watching it.
I
So I guess
mean-
that's like one potential.
Yeah.
Like it's very much
Yeah.
like the Arnold Schwarzenegger film from the 80s,
Total Recall?
Total Recall, where there's that ability to kind
Mr.
of
Mom. No, wait. Twins. That's what we're
twins.
talking about.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Jingle all the
Little Danny
way.
DeVito, right? Yeah.
Batman and Robin.
Nice to meet you.
So maybe a quick question for you guys, maybe Connor first, is so if you had the choice, you had for whatever trauma it is you're experiencing right now, you had the choice between antidepressants, psychedelics, and this, memory reduction, very invasive brain technique. Which would you choose?
I mean, if we're talking like right here, right now, I think I'm going guided psychedelics. I've done some research on that actually from some story work that I've also done, but I've done some research on guided psychedelics. There's a lot of evidence that guided psychedelics, actually, there's a lot of good clinical evidence that in the right scenario that can actually be very helpful to people, especially with people dealing with impending death. And it's starting to expand. So I'm actually kind of optimistic about guided psychedelics. I would say that this technology right now, it's just too new, right? It is too new. We don't know enough about it. I'm not saying that at some point in the future you might not flip on that and say, oh wow, but for me, this is just my personal worldview. This is not right. I do think for me, I would want it to be a treatment that that helped me deal with the trauma as opposed to erasing the trauma. I'm a big believer at the end of the day that you really have to, you can't have secrets, you can't hide things away, you actually can't heal if you don't really try to deal with these things. Now, if there's a technology that allows the pain to be less, if there's a technology that allows, like Chris, you're talking about your friends who I've known people too who've had horrible things happen to them and it's changed their whole life. And yeah, if there's a thing that means that they can walk down a dark alley or be in a public space with people and not feel this like crippling anxiety, or somebody touches them on the shoulder and they freak out because of something that happened in their past. Yeah, I think that actually has a huge amount of value. But the idea of just snipping out the memories, I honestly, it feels like it's a bandage. It feels like you're actually not dealing with the root cause.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really makes me.
I would probably agree with that. Sorry.
Well, and I guess it's just we'll move on in a second, but I think the question maybe for you, Chris, is I'm not exactly sure what the point of this research is, because it seems like there's lots of pretty solid solutions in terms of dealing with things like PTSD, and that's one thing I'm not 100% clear on why they're like what the end hope is for this kind of technology.
I would assume like maximizing efficiency, because it seems like a lot of like the majority of like what AI in itself has been like used for. Not even necessarily that it can. I don't think the appeal of AI has ever been that it can do things better than humans can, or that it can do things like that it's more skilled than like the average human expert in like any given field. I think the entire appeal of AI is that it's just more efficient time wise. That like you can have all that like if you need like a painting, if you need like a logo, if you need complex algorithms solved, if you need like whatever, if you need like a ironclad like legal case on how to like defend yourself in court, like AI can do all that, like, or at least like the pitches that AI can do all that like this, like the click of our fingers, which is exactly what our culture is like catered around, that kind of like instant gratification, instant convenience. So yeah, that's what I would imagine like the main motivating factor of this technology would be, just like doing the exact same thing that like antidepressants or like years of therapy could do, but like instantaneously.
And to be fair, Scott, I do think there's probably something of this, just a very quick final thought, that, I think a lot of this stuff just comes from people, especially in the science front, who are just like playing around with ideas. What if? And so, I wonder if the beginning of this research, I don't think it was as kind of focused as you're talking about, like, oh, why would you bother to do this when there's these other options? I think it probably started off with, hey, can I start sniffing around? Can we do this? And then when the technology exists, then somebody in a marketing department then comes out and says, well, this is how we can make money on it, right?
So I guess
That's all it takes.
in the comments, let us know what you think the unexpected consequences of this technology will be.
And if you want mushrooms, medicine, or machines,
That's
The
right.
3 M's.
the 3M. This is the new 3M.
M cubed. That's right, yeah. Okay, moving on to something less invasive because it doesn't technically involve our own personal brain cells, I guess, but is a cloud server made up entirely of human brain cells. So this is kind of definitely giving me very like kind of reverse matrixy kind of vibes, you know. It's not humans whose, you know, brains I guess are being energy is being harvested, but it's a cloud of like brain cells that are being incubated. So less invasive, I guess. But so this I don't know. Have you guys heard about Cortical Labs and their
No, this was all
human
horrifyingly
neuron
new to
based
me.
game? Is it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So basically, there's this company called Cortical Labs, and were the first to create a commercial biological computer. So basically, what they did was they got 800,000 lab grown human neurons onto a single silicon chip, equipped with that they're basically able to read the data from the neurons and input data to it. And so the first experiment they did, which got some news a few months ago, was they had it playing Pong. And then now they've sort of like taken this to the next level, and they now have it playing Doom. I'm not exactly sure how good a Doom player it is, but nonetheless, it was able to play Doom. And so yeah, so they're building out essentially a server farm of these brain-powered computers.
I'm curious what the end goal is.
Well, to play Doom really well, to become the world's best.
Like it just kind of seems like what are we? I'm curious what like the
Like, what
practical
problem is
application
it
would be.
solving?
Yeah,
Yeah, like what problem is it solving? Like the only thing I saw in there, they said it was like way less energy intensive. That was the bit that was interesting to me. I'm like, oh, if you're telling me we could build all, going back to what we just were talking about, if we could build like all these server farms and they actually require way less water, way less electricity, that might actually be like a real public good. Despite the factor of it being human brains. I mean, I guess you can get used to anything. I mean, like artificial hearts. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's biological material being used for something. The thing that I was interested that in one of the slides you sent us, Scott, it talked about the idea of, and let me make sure I have this correct, allows researchers to remotely deploy code directly to living human brain cells from anywhere in the world, which got me wondering, does that mean they'll be able to put code into our brains? Like, is this where this could end up going? Could somebody like hack my brain? Could I get a virus in my brain? Like, are they gonna find all my passwords that are stuck in, like, I don't know. That got me a little nervous, this idea that they could send code to human brain cells. And
or worse,
could
use
that
it
be
to
mine?
send like ads directly to your brain.
Oh yeah, can you imagine? Then you have like no rights, and then just like every like 30 seconds, like just an ad comes across. Like that would be.
Unskippable.
And then they find out, how 80,000 people like get these like hemorrhages and die, and they're like, oh, there was a little mistake when we sent you that Snapple ad.
I thought we were getting less invasive, but I think we're actually getting more invasive and answering maybe the previous question we left on the last one.
Yeah,
The unintended
this is frightening for real,
consequences of.
for real.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
other
it's,
one, like the other one made a little more sense in terms of like, all right, I can see this idea of like trying to help people with trauma, unless this really does have a dramatic impact in the type of resources that are needed to have large scale cloud computing. I'd be very curious to see, what is the problem they're solving. If that's the problem, I'm interested. If that's not the problem, I'm really curious what the problem is, because it feels like it might be one of those scary kind of non-problems.
Yeah.
Well, and the sense I get from what I read from the article is that the benefit of working with neurons is one, the energy efficiency thing. Like our brains have evolved over, many millennia, well, millions of years, and so our brains are arguably much more efficient than most computers are at doing, what they do, computing things. So. Yeah, I think that might be the potential end game there is just having a much more maybe environmentally beneficial computer.
So human brain cells powering AI, taking human jobs. So I like it. I like the symmetry there. Maybe that's gonna be the future, Chris. Like maybe here's our future sci-fi world is the way we get that universal income that they say they're gonna pay us so that like we still have money to buy things and capitalism still exists will be if we rent out our brain cells as actual portions of the cloud. And they're not going to need to put it in some big room, in some warehouse in New Mexico. It's going to be all of us walking around at every given moment with 80% of the brain we're not using, just cycling to make sure that AI can do the things it needs to do.
Yeah, so we're basically like the technological equivalent to like cattle, getting like the teats of our minds milked by big business and by big tech, you know?
Can I get a T-shirt that says "Mind Teat"? I think I need a Mind Teat T-shirt. I think that might actually be my punk band, Mind Teat.
Nah, that's crazy. Like in terms of like sci-fi, like one concept that this whole like idea of like human brains being used to power AI kind of reminded me of it reminded me of the original creation of the Marvel Comics villain Ultron, where basically the way that Ultron is essentially like an evil AI program that was designed by one of the Avengers, Hank Pym, who is like a scientist who is trying to like build like a like again a hyper independent hyper efficient AI algorithm, and he used his own brain waves as like a template to like design how like its deductive reasoning and how like his mind would function. But as later comics like decades throughout the decades would like dictate, is that Hank Pym himself is someone who like struggles with like various mental health issues. Like he has schizophrenia that like oftentimes like results in like almost like a multiple personality disorder, where like sometimes like he's Ant-Man, sometimes he's another character called Yellow Jacket who like thinks that he killed Hank Pym when really he is Hank Pym. So it's like his mind is like not like he's not exactly like the pinnacle of mental health in the Marvel universe, which one could argue, or like a lot of people interpret, is the main reason why Ultron becomes like a murdering like robot killing machine. So that was just the first place that my mind went with the idea of like using humans neurons as like a pathway to like power AI. And it also makes me wonder like what kinds of like brains and what kinds of like human neurons would even be like eligible to take on like a task like this. Would it matter like how what kind of like mental like faculties you have? Like if you were to use someone with say like dementia to like power this kind of like AI algorithm, how would that affect its effectiveness? I'd be curious about that.
Yeah, it's all pretty wild and pretty mind blowing. I think the one of the other thoughts I had was just the ethical sort of considerations in terms of using other people's brains to then harvest it for to run a computer. Arguably, there's no consciousness in that little sliver of the brain that you've taken, but how far do we take it? And what are the consequences if like we die and then they learn to use our entire brain and keep it alive in order to run a computer.
Yeah, I guess that gets into that question of like if it's conscious, I think that creates a whole different question. It's kind of like looking at like sort of like USS Callister from Black Mirror, and this idea of like if NPCs are getting to that type of level or of awareness, or Free Guy being another good example of like when NPCs get to that level of awareness, you do get into a really interesting question of who's going to be the first lawyer who's standing up for the quote unquote human rights of these digital, if they're aware that they're feeling pain, if they are aware that they are being tortured, where does that line come? So I think if consciousness is involved, then I think, yeah, that's a really slippery ethical slope. I suppose if it's just growing cells in a lab that have no ability to, that are really just conducting electricity, then it's just a different type of hardware. It's, I guess maybe it feels a little more ghoulish to us, but 30 or 40 years from now, people will be like, oh yeah, of course, it's the most natural. It's organic, man. It's just organic. It's
Why were we doing it all along?
Yeah, man. It's from the earth, man.
Why did it take so
it's
long?
cool. Smoke it, man.
Well, it's funny because we're questioning the ethics of and the potential for AI to be conscious. Because sometimes using ChatGPT or whatever it is, I might use, it feels like, okay, wait a minute, is this thing sentient? You know, so there's those kind of like ethical considerations that come up. But with this stuff, the source material came from something that was sentient, whereas the AI has is arguably never been sentient. You know, some people think it has, but like, you know, arguably it's never been sentient. So I guess it's just a different. It's kind of going in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd look a little bit at that like it's like the idea of like, when you have a heart transplant. I mean, yes, the heart you took from somebody else was from a sentient being, but the heart itself is not sentient. So if this mass of neurons doesn't possess the ability for self-awareness, then I think, I would look at it as like, like an organ donation. But I guess you get into the question of, who is the original donor of these cells? Could there, like you were saying, Chris, like if there was something in whoever the original donors are that you later discover that there was, dementia or something, like could that be baked in? I don't know enough about this science to know if that's even a realistic concern, but, things to think about, I guess.
But yeah, like going back to that like idea of like, the like post-mortem kind of like corpse reanimation of like certain like people based off of like patterns of like how they grew. I very easily could see that becoming more of a reality more like often or like sooner than we'd think, specifically with how like we've even seen it like in entertainment. Like there's the the show or like the Netflix continuation of the Karate Kid franchise, Cobra Kai. In the last season, there is a scene that was approved by because essentially the actor who played Mr. Miyagi in the original Karate Kid films is no longer with us, and his presence is very largely felt throughout like the entirety of like the Cobra Kai series because it's following like his pupil Daniel as he deals with the ramifications of like a lot of what happened when he was the original Karate Kid back in those the original trilogy, and his presence is largely felt. But in the last season of Cobra Kai, there's a scene where it's like a dream sequence where Daniel LaRusso was essentially fighting side by side with his deceased mentor, Mr. Miyagi, who is essentially recreated with like technology or with like CGI. Like they CGI'd the deceased actor's face onto another stunt actor's body essentially, and like had made it so that we could see his face as he fights side by side with Daniel LaRusso in this dream sequence. And the whole sequence was approved by the actor who played him. It was all approved by the actor's family's
Marita.
estate. Yeah, Pat Morita. It was all approved by Pat Morita's family. So it was all approved by his estate. They were like, "Yeah, we give you permission to like use his likeness in this form or fashion," and that's all well and good. But it also begs the question: how will we see this technology like permeate into like our regular day to day? There was another Marvel show that came out, I think last year, called Ironheart. A show that I particularly like. That show was not for me. Full transparency, like I was not like the biggest fan of it. I only saw like a couple episodes, but essentially the main character has this friend who passed away in a tragic accident, and the main character, the protagonist, is also, her name is Riri. She's like a very prolific Iron Man style like inventor who like oftentimes like experiments with AI and experiments with different forms of technology, and she devises or like she invents like this AI algorithm that essentially accidentally downloads all of the footage that she has of her dead best friend and essentially manifests itself as a hologram version of her deceased friend who rationalizes things like her, talks like her, says things that like algorithmically it believes her deceased friend would say based off of the data that it analyzed. So it's almost essentially like you look like my friend, you sound like my friend, you talk like my friend, you walk like my friend, you have all the same mannerisms as my friend. So like does that make you like does that make you the same person? Like, does that make it like psychologically? There's so much like to unpack there in terms of like how it would allow folks to cope with like that kind of loss. But like, yeah, I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts.
Cool. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because when we talked about this idea of like this resurrection of the deceased as digital avatars, and like you said, we've seen it in movies, a bunch of movies. Like the commercialization aspect of it is on one level kind of like a nothing burger for me, in the sense that like, I feel like, if you're famous, Chris, you go on and you become like the best known creator, I mean, even more famous than you are now, that you would sit there and you might say, hey, like in my will and testament, I'm going to make it very clear that either I'm okay with my digital avatar being used to sell pledge or condoms or whatever the hell it's going to be used, right? Like whatever weird thing people want to do. Or you're being like, nah, man, like I'm not into this. Like, no, right? So I think there you get some clarity, right? Like Pat Morita's, his family's estate had to make that decision. But in the future, you as next Pat Morita is going to be like, no, guys, this is what I want. I don't want me selling anything except for maybe if this brand or this brand or this brand came calling, because I really like those brands. Or no, I do think where it gets really interesting is what you were just talking about, is this idea of when it's not for commercialization, like say one of our parents passes away unexpectedly, and we have this technology where, like you were just talking about with Riri, where you could feed everything about your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. And then it gets into a weird space of like, I think individuals are probably not going to be looking at this saying, hey, in my will, I don't want any of my family to use any elements of me to recreate me, or to allow me to be recreated so that dad can still advise you from the grave. But I also wonder, like, if I do it anyways, and some company is offering me the service, hey, give me all the videos of your dad. My dad did just pass away a couple of years ago. Like, give me all the videos of your dad. Give me all his speeches. Give me everything. Give me all the photos. I can just put your dad on a phone. If I do it, and like my brother doesn't know I've done it, my mom doesn't know I've done it, like who's to stop me, right? I just pay some service. Like, I think that's the part that gets scary, is once I'm dead, if my kids, for whatever reason, decide that they want to bring me back, it seems random because they don't really seem to want me around much that right now. But like, say that changes and they do, like who's to stop them, right? And or does that create some like ugly inter-family shit where like, my middle kid brings me back and my daughter's like, dad would never have wanted that, and now you've got siblings suing each other. That's the shit that scares me, is a subscription service that lets you bring your loved one back. And again, this kind of goes back to our very first conversation, which is I do think there's something intensely important about being able to experience loss, accept loss, and move on. Like I think about my dad a ton. I imagine what my dad would say. I miss the phone calls I had with my dad. Does it make me tear up? 2 years later, when I think of it, I'm like, oh man, like if my dad had seen this, he would have really enjoyed this, or he would have really hated this, and that would have been just as much fun. But like, he's gone, and you move on. And I think there's something so important, and I don't know where I would be. There's a version of this where I would love to be able to pick up a phone and have a conversation, but at the same token, I don't know. It feels like it wouldn't actually be accepting the loss. That's what gets me nervous about this idea of being able to just forget about superstars. That's going to be a whole other thing, and that's going to be dealt with lawyers and wills. I don't even think it's an issue. It's the day-to-day, it's the individuals. That's the stuff that I think gets creepy, and that's, I think, where probably in terms of sci-fi storytelling is where the real meat is on the bone.
Yeah, because like I feel like there's a certain level of cognitive dissonance you would kind of have to like entertain the idea that like, yeah, this is like my mom who passed away, and like this is actually her who's like advising me now, and not just a collection of like ones and zeros that's like approximating its best guess of like what she would say. Like, there's a certain level of, you almost have to like turn a certain part of your brain off to like even like entertain that as a concept, or even to like acknowledge it, like or tell your brain that that's what's actually happening, when really on some level deep down it's not really like your parent, it's not really like your loved one, it's not really your friend, it's just like an algorithm. But you trick yourself into feeling like that, like it's real. And like, yeah, like I can't imagine how the psychological effect of like what that could potentially do to folks.
It
And it's
seems
kind of
bad.
bringing us full circle.
It
Kind of
seems
bringing
bad.
it. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of bringing us full circle a little bit because, in the first bit we were talking about the, technology that might help us to relieve certain maybe traumatic memories, that kind of thing. And now we're maybe talking about, having a loved one pass, like a father passing, that kind of thing where I feel the same thing maybe as you do with my father passing, where there's times where I just forget in a way that he existed, and that's a bit of a traumatic experience for me because I don't have that same emotional connection to him anymore, or I'm struggling to really hold on to those memories, and part of me doesn't want to lose those memories, so I'd almost want those memories amplified if I could in some way. And I guess this technology in some ways is sort of offering that as a solution. But I agree with you, Connor. I don't know if I'd want my dad brought back to life in this kind of, augmented sort of way.
I mean, the memories is interesting, right? I see the idea of like saying, "Hey, I want to make sure, I want to make sure I don't forget." You hear people talk about how they start to forget the faces of loved ones when they've gone, and how traumatic that is. And maybe that is natural and normal, and we actually need that. But I could get behind the idea of like, oh, the memories that I most cherish about my dad are things that I could call up and have. But I mean, let's also be real. Memories are bullshit, right? We know this. We know the science behind memories. We know that what we think we remember is not true. That we compress memories, we misremember things, we have memories the way that we saw things, which are totally different than other people see them. Like, memories are not real. They are not any sort of real, they're not history. They're not fact, right? They're weird, bizarre things that we swear to ourselves are so important and so true, and they're not. But at the same token, they are so valuable. So yeah, the idea of memories and being able to keep those seems really useful. But the idea, like, and Chris, you were speaking to this, the idea of like creating an avatar, an algorithm that is meant to be a simulacrum of a loved one, that for me, that seems really kind of creepy. But that's me.
Yeah,
Somebody else, that might be
like
super
how
comforting.
Yeah, like how different is it from like it's like having a dog and like your dog dies, so like you stuff it and keep it in your apartment and like you talk to it the same way like it was still alive, and then like you be like, "Hey Lassie, what do you want for breakfast today?" And you're like, "Roof roof roof." Like, it's to me it's like it's not, is it really that far off from like that kind of
Steak.
concept? Like,
Shut up, Lassie. You're not getting any more steak.
yeah, it's like, yo, holy man. Very
All right, well,
macabre the more I think about it. Like, but at the same time, it's hard not to sympathize with folks who like would turn to that like in their time of need, because like grief can be such like a powerful thing that like makes people act in ways that they wouldn't usually otherwise, or like rationalize things that maybe shouldn't be rationalized.
And there's something probably really poetic. I mean, again, like softening on what I was just kind of talking about. I'm sure there's a really poetic, beautiful idea of like, for me, it's like a temporary element. Like, like if you could have one last weekend with your father, and you would know that this is not real, but it would give you one last weekend to go to that place that was special for both of you. Maybe it's like a cottage and you're fishing and you're on the lake, or, something like that. And then at the end, you say your goodbyes, you get a chance, like, especially like I was fortunate when my dad passed. It was cancer. We knew it was coming. There was a long period of time that we got to deal with it. And so we were able to say all the things that we wanted to say. But I've had friends whose families have passed, so, family members have passed away really sudden, and they didn't get that chance. So yeah, maybe there's, particularly talking about storytelling, there's probably a really beautiful movie, short film, short story about somebody with that loved one for a weekend. And at some point, the turn is you realize this person is dead. And this is just them getting the chance to do and say the things that they never got the chance to do or say. And then that allows them some sort of closure. To me, that actually there's probably a real opportunity for a healthy ability to disengage with someone's death. It's the long-term element of that for me, I'm like, it just feels like it's going to be a crutch that you're never actually going to be able to say goodbye. And that's kind of what life is, whether we like it or not. Life is people dying, and life is saying goodbye, and life is chapters closing. And that's what makes it special and precious, ultimately. And as cliched as that sounds, I really do think it's true. But yeah, now somebody's already writing that story. God damn it, we came up with it here first. But anyways.
We did the work for him, just like.
And maybe okay, so maybe wrapping it up, guys. One final question for each of you: if you had to choose one of them, having a traumatic memory erased with the technology that we talked about in the first session, using your own brain cells to power a server, or resurrecting yourself after you're dead to work for pay for your kids, whatever. What do you choose, Connor?
I mean, can I choose none of the above? They all sound pretty
Yeah,
brutal.
gotta pick one.
Yeah.
I mean, if I gotta choose one, I guess it's like, again, going on the theory that the brain cells are going to cause a real reduction in the use of electricity, water, and other resources. I'm going to go for that one because, like,
Okay.
shit, man, we're using way too many of these things right now. So that would be the one I'd go for. But you're just going to tell me that it turns out that, like, now my brain cells are being used to infect the entire population of China or something. So great. Now I'm a mass murderer. I'm sorry, China. Right?
Yeah.
Meh. They always do it to the redheads. They're always blaming the redheads.
Hey, hindsight's 2020. You live and you learn. Well,
What serial
about you,
killers
Chris?
were redheads? Come on.
honestly, like my first instinct is to say like the AI resurrection, just because at least in that scenario, I wouldn't have to be alive to see the ramifications of it. Like I wouldn't have to live to see the consequences of like that decision. Even though like one could argue that like it would be like very the react the ramifications could vary depending on like how my kids turn out, or like how like my loved ones like react to my untimely demise. But like I do like going back to what you were saying, Connor, like I do kind of see like some level of like beauty in the idea of folks being able to like have that closure, have that like if the end goal for doing it is closure and reconciling with certain things, like absolutely, like I could see it being used for that. But again, it goes back to that initial topic that we were discussing, where it's like I don't know if it will be used for that. I don't know if I trust like human nature to be able to differentiate between like, yo, this is a tool to help people grieve, and just like, yo, this is just what I do now. This is just like my life now. This is what I use to cope. Like
Like you said,
indefinitely.
subscription services,
Literally.
right? Like somebody is going to be for $9.99. You can have your dad. Why just have him
Hmm.
for that beautiful weekend? Why not have him for every beautiful weekend? Why should your
Hmm.
kids not get him? And like again, it's like that's a compelling argument. Hey, what my kids didn't really get to know my dad that much, but maybe now they could, and it's just like, shit, man. At a certain point, for me, at a certain point, you just gotta be like, this is just the hand you got dealt, right? And you just got to move on. But even more importantly, Chris, what happens if your resurrected digital avatar turns out to be a dick? What if
Yeah,
you
I
were
was
like
just literally thinking
resurrected
that.
Superfly is he's kind of a jerk. He's
Yeah,
kind
that
of a
could like
jerk.
slander your reputation in a way, or like say like, or even the opposite. Like say you're a parent, or like say like your loved one like was emotionally abusive toward you, or like never said a kind word, never said they were proud of you, never said they loved you, and like you were to use AI to resurrect them just to hear like your dad or like your mom or like whoever say like, yo, I'm proud of you, son, or like I'm proud of you, like I'm proud of you, like I love you, like if I like that is so like. Man, there is so many complex layers to this. Like,
It's
what
like
a
it's like
can of worms.
Jamaican dad syndrome, right? It's like all my Jamaican friends growing up, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, that was my dad," right? Okay. You'd resurrect him, you'd get him, the algorithm would go firing, and dad would still be like, "I'm not that proud of you.
Yeah, no.
Baby, what have you done that I should be so proud?"
Yeah, no, nothing.
For
Holy.
eternity.
For eternity.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess by default then I'm taking option number one and blissing out with just no emotions whatsoever anymore.
I guess that's one way to do it.
No more
But
trauma.
Scott,
No
you were
more
already
feeling.
you were such the demonstrative emotional person to begin with.
That's right.
How can I deal
So
with this?
much.
How can I
Maybe
deal
we'll
with
go the
this
other
like
direction.
180
Maybe we'll go the
change?
other
What am I supposed
direction.
to do?
Yeah, like
Maybe we'll go the other direction and just amplify everything.
I mean, I would pay good money for like emotionally amplified Scott. That would be, I don't know what that looks like, but I'm in for the ride.
I'd be
All right. Well, I'm
intrigued. I'd be
signing
intrigued.
up.
That'd be a sight to behold.
All right. Good times, guys. I think that's
Woo.
Thanks so much, guys.
a good session.
Thank you so much, Chris, for letting me join in with you on this. Scott for inviting me. My mind was blown. These were some
But
pretty
yeah,
crazy topics, and yeah, I hope people out there, I hope you found these things really interesting. And if you're looking to find out a little bit more about me, you can find me at Instagram at The Real Connor. I'm a graphic novelist. I've written things in sci-fi, history, kids novels, fantasy, the whole 9 yards.
yeah,
Thanks,
yeah.
Connor.
Yeah, thanks, Connor. It's great chatting with y'all. Great chopping it up with y'all about all these dope sci-fi concepts, or these dope real life concepts now. But yeah, if you wanna like what I do, you wanna see more, make sure you follow on Instagram. I am Supafly, TikTok, Supafly Comics. Subscribe to my podcast, the Icon Squad Pod. And yeah, appreciate your time. Appreciate you tuning in. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff.
Nice. Thanks, guys.